Good morning, students. Our today's topic in the subject of business studies is oral communication. And particularly, we are going to read this topic in internal communication. So, within the business. So, concentrate yourself. We are going to start. Some ideas and concepts will be involved. So your concentration is required. So, first, we are going to read the definition of the internal communication. Refers to all communication that takes place within the business and may be in the following form. So, oral communication. So, our today's topic is oral communication. Oral communication is a communication in which spoken words are used for communicating your message to the others. So, the first type of the oral communication is telephone conversations. Companies have internal telephone system. The employees can have conference with other colleagues while sit at their desk. So this is the first type of the oral communication, that is called telephone system or internal conferencing system. So these kind of the telephone conversation is called oral communication. The next thing is meetings, because in meetings, again, spoken words have to be used, may include a few people or hundreds. For instance, the annual general meeting or the extraordinary meetings of the shareholders of a large public limited companies. Some meetings are held by means of the telephone or by a video link, but most are still on face-to-face basis. So whatever the form of the meeting is, it may be a video link meeting or face-to-face meeting. So spoken words have to be used. So this is another type of the oral communication. Next type is in the oral communication is video conferencing. Groups of the people in different locations are able to hear and see each other through a video link. For large firms, this method may be cheaper than sending executives all over the world to meetings, because the video conferencing is much more cheaper than sending executives to all over the world. And video conferencing do the same thing that is required. Yet, as a form of the communication, it remains expensive and TV pictures are not always of the high quality. So these are the drawbacks of this type of the oral communication, because sometimes due to weather, the picture quality is not good, or hearing quality is not good. So these are the drawbacks of the video conferencing. The next type of the oral communication is interviews and assessments. If a member of the staff is seriously concerned about something, she can request a formal interview with his or her superior to sort out the matter. Also, the manager may request an interview with the employee to bring a serious matter to his or her attention. So these are the facts due to which interviews and assessment is required. Sometimes a worker needs to meet his superior on a very serious note, and sometimes a manager may need to meet the employee on a serious note. So this is another form of the oral communication. Advantages of the oral communication. Time saving. When action is required to be taken immediately, it is the best to transmit a message orally. If the executive's workload is high, then they stop writing and by oral instructions they complete their message transmission and released their workload, and also it saves times. And it is the also advantage of oral communication, that you directly communicate with your listeners and they may raise questions, objections, and their inquiries. The other thing of the advantage of the oral communication is cost savings. Cost is involved in any communication. When the communication is needed within the organization, and if it and is completed in orally, it has not needed any paper, pen, or stamp or computer. So it is cost saving. So it saves the money of the organization. The next advantage of the oral communication is more powerful. Speech is a more powerful means of the persuasion and control. Therefore, executives often prefer to transmit messages orally, because in this type of the oral communication you directly address to your listeners, and this is more powerful, this is more impressive, because body language and your emotions may also be involved in this type of the communication. Next advantage is effectiveness. With the help of the variation in the tone, pitch, and intensity of the voice, the speaker can convey shades of the meaning. So this is another very big advantage of the oral communication, because the variation in the tone, pitch, and intensity of the voice. So these are the advantages through which you can convey your message more effectively. The next advantage is immediate feedback. The speaker can get immediate feedback on whether it is creating a favorable impression on the receiver, or whether the receiver will protest, or whether the receiver has clearly understood his meaning, or is feeling perplexed or baffled, and he can mold and adjust his message accordingly. So feedback is quick in this type of the communication, that is oral communication. The next advantage of the oral communication is more suitable. The employees felt more suitable when the message transmit in orally. They get an opportunity for feedback and clarification, so they feel themselves contribute the situation. The next advantage of the oral communication is a relationship develops. Oral communication is mostly carried out, helps to promote friendly relations between the parties communicating with each other, because they discuss with each other, they come in contact with each other, so relationship develops. The next advantage of the oral communication is flexibility. By the demand of the situations, oral instructions can be changed easily, and for these cases, maintain the formalities are not necessary. So it is very much flexible and effective. The next advantage of the oral communication is easiness. It is so easy method of the communication. It needs little preparation to send a message, because no pen, no paper is required, no thinking process, like more formalities are required. So no need of the pens, pencils, and other writing equipments which are needed in written communication. So this is the method which is much more easy. The next advantage of the oral communication is correction of errors. If an error is expressed at the time of the oral communication, it was possible to rectify at that time or within a very short time, because your listeners may raise an object or may raise some points. So correction of the error is quick in this type of the communication. The next advantage of the oral communication is informal communication. In oral communication, no need to maintain such formalities which are needed in written communication. So it is easy and helpful to any organization. You may come in direct contact. You may discuss the things directly. So this type of the communication is informal communication. The next advantage of the oral communication is motivation. In oral communication system, top executives and subordinates, staff can sit face to face and exchange their views directly. So subordinates are motivated day by day. So they feel themselves the part of the situation, of the process. They feel themselves motivated. The next advantage of the oral communication is special applications. Oral communication is more helpful in communicating messages to groups of the people at assembly meetings, etc. The next advantage of the oral communication is maintaining secrecy, because your message cannot be leaked or may be leaked to some other parties, because you are face to face communicating with each other. Interested parties of oral communication can maintain the secrecy of the messages easily. The disadvantages of the oral communication: number one, no record. Because no record will be there. In oral communication, messages are difficult to record. So it is impossible to preserve the message for future. Number two, this type of the communication is expensive. In a sense, it is also expensive media of the communication. Sometimes the audience can be managed by paying. So if you have to manage the audience by paying, so maybe this will be expensive. TADA, traveling allowance, and whatever DA. On the other hand, technological devices that are used in this system are costly. Okay, the next disadvantage of the oral communication is distortion of the word. If distortion of the words occurs in oral communication, then main goals of the organization may be failed. Distortion may be due to the technological errors. So because of the whether the speakers may not work properly, so distortion may be there. So if distortion of the words are there, the main goals of the organization may be failed. The next disadvantage of the oral communication is inaccuracy. There is very possibility of inaccurate messages to reach to the destination. So the reverse result of the expected plan may be occurred, because your audience may not be able to properly understand your message orally when they hear the words, because all the workers are not able to understand the message quickly. So to those kind of the workers, written communication is more better. So they take their time to understand the message. The next disadvantage of the oral communication is limited use. The scope of the usage of the oral communication is limited. It is not suitable for lengthy messages. It should be suited for short messages, because you cannot have a very long meeting with your with your audience. So this is limited use. And other disadvantage of the oral communication is probability of omitting main subject. Sometimes main subject may be omitted to express a word for communicating, so expected result may not be achieved. The probability of omitting main subject is sometimes the speaker may flow in some other direction in addressing the audience, so main subject may be omitted. Another disadvantage of the oral communication is confused speech. Sometimes the receiver fails to understand the meaning of the message due to habitual productions of the speaker. Next disadvantage of the oral communication is no legal validity. There is any legal validity of the oral message, as the oral messages are not tapped and kept records, so it can be denied easily if the situation goes against the speaker. So this is another disadvantage. The next one is less important. In oral communication, meaningless speech can mislead the main effects of the communication. But when the information comes out in written, we take it seriously. The next disadvantage is lack of the secrecy. In oral communication, the important and secret information may be disclosed. The next disadvantage is defective. Oral communication is defective for companies' policy, procedure, programs, law, and other important information. So it may be defective. The next disadvantage is create misunderstanding. The speaker often gives message without having properly organized it earlier. So it is possible that he may not be able to make himself properly to communicate with the receiver. As a result, misunderstanding may develop. So this was the topic, students, oral communication. I hope so this will be much more easier for you to understand. Read this lecture again, understand it, learn it, and make your notes. Thank you so much.